Imagine a world where fearless warriors sail across uncharted oceans in sleek, dragon-headed ships, their names whispered in both fear and awe. The true story of the Vikings is more than just raids and battles, it's a complex tale of ambition, innovation, and cultural exchange that shaped the course of European history. Join us as we delve into the epic saga of the Vikings, unraveling the mysteries behind their rise to power and the legacy they left behind. The Vikings, with their iconic longships and tales of conquests, have long been romanticized as one of history's most enigmatic and formidable civilizations. From their origins in the icy, unforgiving landscapes of Scandinavia to their far-reaching influence across Europe and beyond, the Vikings carved out a legacy that has endured for over 1,000 years. But who were the Vikings, and how did they rise to such power before their eventual decline? Welcome to our deep dive into the complicated history of the Vikings, a civilization that has captivated imaginations for centuries. Often portrayed as fierce raiders and seafaring warriors, the Vikings were much more than just their reputation suggests. Emerging from the Scandinavian regions around the late 8th century, they quickly rose to prominence through their remarkable shipbuilding skills and adventurous spirit. Their longships allowed them to navigate not only the turbulent waters of the North Sea but also the rivers of Europe, leading to trade, exploration, and, yes, raids that would leave a lasting mark on the continent. However, the Viking Age, which lasted until the 11th century, was not just about conquest. It was a time of cultural exchange, innovation, and transformation. The Vikings established trade routes that connected distant lands, bringing goods, ideas, and even religions into contact with one another. Their influence can still be felt today in various aspects of European culture, from language to art and even governance. In this video, we will unravel the complexities of Viking society, exploring their rise to power and the factors that led to their eventual decline. We'll delve into their rich mythology, social structures, and the legacy they left behind. So, buckle up as we embark on this engaging journey through time, uncovering the true story of the Vikings and their profound impact on European history. The story of the Vikings begins in the late 8th century in Scandinavia, a region comprising modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. This harsh and rugged land, characterized by towering fjords, dense forests, and long, bitter winters, shaped the Viking people into a hardy and resilient community. Life in these northern territories was far from easy, the soil was often poor, and the growing season was short, making agriculture a challenging endeavor. As a result, the early Scandinavians relied heavily on fishing, hunting, and animal husbandry to sustain their communities. These early Vikings lived in small, tightly knit villages, where social bonds and kinship ties were crucial for survival. Their society was primarily agrarian, but the sea was an essential part of their lives from the very beginning. The Scandinavian peninsula, surrounded by water, naturally encouraged maritime activities. The Vikings honed their skills as fishermen and sailors, becoming intimately familiar with the fickle nature of the sea. It was this relationship with the sea that would eventually propel the Vikings onto the world stage. The rugged Scandinavian coastlines, dotted with countless inlets and fjords, provided the perfect environment for the development of seafaring technology. The Viking longship, a marvel of engineering, was the result of centuries of innovation. These ships were fast, flexible, and capable of navigating both open seas and shallow rivers, making them the perfect vessels for exploration, trade, and warfare. The Viking Age is often celebrated for its remarkable expeditions that expanded the horizons of the known world. Among the most famous explorers was Leif Erikson, who is believed to have reached North America around the year 1000, long before Columbus. Eriksson's journey took him to a land he called Vinland, likely located in present-day Newfoundland, Canada. This discovery not only showcased the Vikings' exceptional seafaring skills but also marked one of the earliest European contacts with North America, paving the way for future exploration. Viking expeditions were not solely about discovery, they were also driven by the pursuit of trade. The Vikings established extensive trade routes that connected Scandinavia to the Byzantine Empire, the Middle East, and even as far as Asia. They traded goods such as furs, timber, and amber for silver, spices, and textiles, creating a vibrant network that enriched their society and influenced European economies. The impact of Viking exploration on European geography and culture was profound. Their voyages led to the establishment of settlements in places like Iceland, Greenland, and parts of the British Isles, which contributed to the cultural melting pot of medieval Europe. The Vikings introduced new ideas, technologies, and even languages, leaving an indelible mark on the regions they touched. As we explore these expeditions further, we'll uncover how the Vikings not only charted new territories but also transformed the cultural landscape of Europe. The Viking Age is often synonymous with daring raids that struck fear into the hearts of European societies. One of the most notable early raids occurred in 793 AD at Lindisfarne, a small island off the northeast coast of England. This attack on the monastery marked the beginning of a series of brutal incursions that would devastate coastal communities. The attack on Lindisfarne was particularly shocking to the Christian world because monasteries were seen as sacred places of worship and learning, and they were usually left unmolested by other European powers. However, to the Vikings, these monasteries represented a rich source of plunder. They were filled with treasures, gold, silver, and religious artifacts that were relatively undefended. The brutality of the raid, where monks were killed or enslaved, and the treasures were taken, cemented the Vikings' reputation as ruthless marauders. But why did the Vikings begin their raids? Several factors contributed to the onset of the Viking Age. Overpopulation in Scandinavia, due to limited arable land, may have pushed younger sons who had no inheritance prospects to seek fortunes elsewhere. Additionally, political instability and internal conflicts within Scandinavian societies might have driven some to turn to raiding as a means of acquiring wealth and power. Finally, the Vikings' intrinsic desire for adventure and exploration played a significant role. The sea was their gateway to new lands and opportunities, and they were eager to exploit it. Viking warfare was characterized by swift, surprise attacks and superior naval tactics. Their long ships allowed them to navigate rivers and coastlines, enabling them to strike quickly and retreat before local forces could mount a defense. Motivated by the desire for wealth, land, and resources, the Vikings were relentless in their pursuit of conquest, often targeting monasteries and wealthy towns that were ill-prepared for battle. The reactions of European kingdoms varied widely. Initially, many were caught off guard and struggled to respond effectively. Over time, however, they adapted their defenses and formed alliances to counter the Viking threat. Some kingdoms even sought to integrate the Vikings into their societies, leading to a complex interplay of conflict and cooperation that would shape the future of Europe. As we delve deeper into these raids, we'll uncover how they influenced the course of history and transformed European societies. One of the primary targets of Viking expansion was the British Isles. Following the raid on Lindisfarne, the Vikings launched numerous attacks on England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. These raids often targeted monasteries, coastal towns, and villages, where the Vikings could easily take plunder and captives. However, over time, these raids evolved into something more permanent. The Vikings began to establish settlements in the British Isles, particularly in the north and east of England, in a region that would become known as the Danelaw. The Danelaw was a large area of England where Danish law and customs dominated, rather than Anglo-Saxon law. The establishment of the Danelaw was a significant event in English history, as it marked the beginning of a lasting Viking influence on English culture, language, and society. The Vikings in the Danelaw were not just raiders but settlers who integrated into the local population, intermarried, and adopted aspects of Anglo-Saxon culture. Conversely, their presence also left a lasting impact on English law, language, and place names, many of which have Norse origins. In Ireland, the Vikings founded several major cities, including Dublin, which began as a Viking longport or winter encampment. Over time, these encampments grew into bustling urban centers that became important hubs of trade and commerce in the region. To the south, the Vikings set their sights on the Frankish Empire, ruled by the descendants of Charlemagne. The Frankish Empire was one of the most powerful entities in Europe at the time, but it was also a land of opportunity for the Vikings. The Frankish rivers, such as the Seine and the Loire, provided easy access to the heart of the empire, where the Vikings could raid wealthy towns and monasteries. One of the most famous Viking leaders to target the Frankish Empire was Ragnar Lothbrok, a legendary figure whose exploits are shrouded in both history and myth. Ragnar is said to have led numerous raids on Frankish lands, including the infamous siege of Paris in 845 AD. According to legend, Ragnar's fleet of longships sailed up the Seine River and laid siege to the city, forcing the Frankish king Charles the Bald to pay a hefty ransom in exchange for their withdrawal. The Frankish rulers, desperate to stop the Viking raids, eventually turned to diplomacy. In 911 AD, Charles the Simple, a later Frankish king, struck a deal with a Viking leader named Rollo. Under the Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte, Rollo was granted land in northern France in exchange for his loyalty and protection against other Viking raiders. This land became known as Normandy, or the land of the Northmen, and Rollo's descendants, the Normans, would go on to play a pivotal role in European history, most notably with the Norman conquest of England in 1066. While the Vikings were wreaking havoc in Western Europe, another group of Norsemen, known as the Varangians, were making their mark in the east. The Varangians traveled along the river systems of Russia, establishing trade routes that connected Scandinavia with the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic caliphates. These trade routes, known as the Volga and Dnieper routes, were vital for the exchange of goods between the north and the south. The Varangians played a significant role in the development of the Kievan Rus, a federation of Slavic tribes under the leadership of Viking rulers. The most famous of these rulers was Rurik, who is traditionally considered the founder of the Rurik dynasty, which would go on to rule Russia for centuries. The Kievan Rus became a powerful entity in Eastern Europe, and its capital, Kiev, grew into a major center of trade and culture. In addition to their influence in the Rus, the Varangians also became prominent in the Byzantine Empire, where they served as elite mercenaries in the emperor's service. The Varangian Guard, as they were known, were highly valued for their loyalty and fighting prowess. These Viking warriors were often deployed in key battles and were known to serve as the emperor's personal bodyguards. The Viking spirit of exploration and colonization extended far beyond the European mainland. In the late 9th century, Norwegian Vikings began to explore and settle the North Atlantic islands, leading to the establishment of colonies in Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. Iceland, with its dramatic landscapes of volcanoes, glaciers, and geysers, was first settled by Norsemen in the late 9th century. According to the Icelandic sagas, the first permanent settler was Ingolfur Arnarsson, who arrived on the island in 874 AD. The settlement of Iceland was part of a larger migration of Norsemen seeking new lands and opportunities. Unlike many other Viking endeavors, the colonization of Iceland was largely peaceful, as the island was uninhabited at the time. Iceland quickly developed into a unique society with its own distinct culture and governance. The Icelandic Althing, established in 930 AD, is often considered the world's oldest parliamentary institution. The Althing was a gathering of chieftains and free men who met annually to settle disputes, make laws, and uphold justice. The Icelandic sagas, which were written down in the 13th century, provide a rich literary record of this period, offering insights into the lives, values, and beliefs of the early Icelandic settlers. The Viking Age was not solely defined by raids and conquests, it was also a period rich in cultural interactions that significantly influenced European civilizations. As the Vikings established trade routes across the continent, they engaged in the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies with various cultures. This interaction led to the introduction of new agricultural practices, metalworking techniques, and even navigational skills that enhanced both Viking and European societies. Viking art and craftsmanship left a lasting mark on European culture. Their intricate designs, often inspired by nature and mythology, influenced artistic styles across the continent. The famous Viking longships, with their elegant lines and functional designs, became a symbol of maritime prowess and inspired shipbuilding techniques in other regions. Additionally, the Vikings contributed to the linguistic landscape of Europe, with many Old Norse words finding their way into the English language, enriching its vocabulary. Mythology also played a crucial role in this cultural exchange. Norse myths and legends, featuring gods like Odin and Thor, captivated the imaginations of neighboring cultures and were often integrated into local folklore. This blending of mythologies fostered a shared cultural heritage that transcended borders. Trade was the backbone of these cultural connections, as it facilitated not only the exchange of goods but also the mingling of ideas and traditions. Markets became melting pots of diverse cultures, where Vikings and Europeans interacted, learned from one another, and ultimately shaped the cultural landscape of medieval Europe. As we explore these interactions further, we'll uncover the profound impact of cultural exchange during the Viking Age. The decline of Viking power can be attributed to a combination of internal and external factors that transformed their society and diminished their influence across Europe. One significant factor was the Christianization of the Vikings. As Christianity spread throughout Scandinavia, it brought about profound changes in social structures and values. The conversion to Christianity often led to the abandonment of traditional Viking practices, including raiding and pagan rituals. This shift not only altered their identity but also diminished the motivations for their earlier conquests. Additionally, internal conflicts within Viking society contributed to their decline. As the Viking Age progressed, the once loosely organized clans began to face power struggles and rivalries. These internal divisions weakened their ability to mount coordinated raids and defend against external threats. At the same time, the rise of centralized monarchies in Europe, particularly in England and France, created stronger, more organized defenses against Viking incursions. Kings like Alfred the Great of England successfully united their kingdoms and implemented strategies to repel Viking attacks, further diminishing their power. Ultimately, the assimilation of Vikings into European cultures played a crucial role in their decline. As they settled in various regions, they began to adopt local customs, languages, and governance structures. This blending of cultures led to the gradual disappearance of the distinct Viking identity. By the end of the 11th century, the once feared Vikings had transformed into integral parts of European society, marking the end of their era as a dominant force in history. In recent years, there has been a resurgence of interest in Viking heritage and archaeology. Excavations across Scandinavia and beyond have uncovered artifacts, burial sites, and settlements that provide valuable insights into Viking life. Museums and cultural institutions are increasingly showcasing these findings, allowing the public to engage with Viking history in meaningful ways. This revival has fostered a sense of pride in Viking ancestry among many, leading to cultural festivals and events celebrating their heritage. Moreover, the fascination with Viking mythology and storytelling remains strong. Norse myths, featuring gods like Odin and Thor, continue to inspire literature, art, and even modern spirituality. The themes of heroism, adventure, and the struggle against fate resonate with contemporary audiences, ensuring that Viking stories remain relevant. As we reflect on the lasting impact of the Vikings, it becomes clear that their legacy is woven into the fabric of modern culture, shaping our understanding of history and identity in profound ways. In this video, we've journeyed through the fascinating and complex history of the Vikings, from their humble beginnings in Scandinavia to their remarkable rise as a formidable force in Europe. We explored their adventurous expeditions, highlighting key figures like Leif Erikson and their significant discoveries, as well as the notorious raids that instilled fear across the continent. We also examined the cultural exchanges that occurred as the Vikings interacted with other civilizations, enriching both their own society and those they encountered.